Richard, thank you again for your amazing presentation and sharing your insights and your expertise. You mentioned in a negotiation, sometimes you don't like the other one. Also in an interview, sometimes you don't like your partner. What is your definition of liking someone or respecting someone?
Well, you always respect the interviewee, always. Because the interviewee, I mean, when I say respect, I mean as an interviewee.
Yeah.
I have no force of law. I can't force you to answer. I don't have a subpoena. There's nothing that I can do. So you have voluntarily agreed to be interviewed. Now, once you've voluntarily agreed, with that comes certain responsibilities on your part and mine. On your part, to answer honestly, to answer the question, to do the ballroom dance with me. You've agreed to do the interview. But from my point of view, I have to recognize you've agreed to do the interview. You have a right to put your point of view. I may not agree with it. It may be an unpopular point of view. But you have a right to your opinion and view. And so even if I disagree with it strongly, excuse me, there are about 3 areas where one is legitimately able to say you're wrong. Genocide, anti-Semitism, racism, those sort of things where you are legitimately, as an interviewer, entitled to say your position is repugnant. Your position is obscene. But they're very few and far between. Somebody who believes in far right-wing economics, well, that's your view. You may be a callous, miserable, horrible person, but that's your view. Somebody who believes in far left economics, you may be an outright Trotskyist communist, but that's your view. Yeah. And never forget with a politician, you and I don't have to stand for election every 4 years. So they are entitled to a certain respect that they are elected.
They are elected, very often not in our understanding of democracy. And
that's a different matter. So that's a different matter. So now you're talking about where you're dealing with the tin pot dictator or the person who's, now you've got to ask yourself, well, all right, they're not elected as we would know it, but they do have power. So I can spend the entire interviewing reminding people that they don't elected, or I can actually concentrate on how they're exercising their power. And that's what you prefer to do.
Mm-hmm. I'm a former hostage negotiator. What I always try to do is to find a contradiction in what people are telling me. This is also a technique which you use?
How do you mean?
That on the one hand, you said this, on the other side, I got the feeling, that I compare what I just heard with my feeling.
Well, that's a very shrewd way, because you have shifted the line of debate. You've said, you've said this has been your policy on that. And then you don't say, but the facts show opposite. Because the moment you say the facts show opposite, this person is going to come up again. It'll be like bullets against concrete. They won't make any progress. Huh? But what you said is, I get the feeling.
Yeah.
And now what I interpret what you've done is you've created a chink in the armor. You have not attacked the armor. You've prized it open. Because now you're saying to the interviewee, you put forward this policy or you put forward this view, but I get the feeling that sometimes you're uncomfortable with it. Mm-hmm. Now they'll say no. But if you say, so now you have to think strategically, but I get the feeling sometimes you're worried it causes hardship. Now I've skated them to some slightly thicker ground. And now they're about to admit, yes, it can cause hardship. And we need to be careful of that. Mm-hmm. And now it's open season. But how bad the hardship? And now you just focus on the hardship. Mm-hmm. And you keep going on the hardship. And now they've sunk themselves.
I like it. And this is in a negotiation very often that I know something, but some stakeholders or PR, they told me, don't say it in a negotiation. So how do you get this feeling that I know something and I try to hide it? What do you do if you get this feeling there is something behind my statements.
Okay, so if you've been told something that you can't use, what's the point of having been told it? You're going to have to use it in some shape or form. Otherwise, there's no point in having been told it. It's a useless piece of information. So your trick and your challenge is not to worry about whether you know that I know that you know that I know that you know that I know. Mm-hmm. Your trick is to work out, how am I going to use it? How am I going to use it so that you don't find out? How am I going to use it to channel you into an area that you didn't really want to go, but you're going to have to go?
How to do it?
Well, you do it over time. That's the problem. You do it over time. You don't do it in one go.
Okay.
And eventually you may have to reveal that you know.
So you pocket, you go back to this.
But you may have to give it, look, if you're making no progress and you've got this piece of information, what use is it to you? Now, as in a negotiation, you may say, it's not useful today, whatever it is of October, but it might be useful in February. I'm not going to blow it up now.
Okay.
So you leave. Mm-hmm. But again, it's still a ticking time bomb. It's still got to be used at some point. And you've got to work out at what point, and are you going to use it in an open way where you hit them? You say that, but I know and you know your bonds are about to be called by the bank and you'll be bankrupt by next Thursday. Or are you going to do it more in a discussion afterwards? Look, you and I know that this is a really difficult time for you. Your bonds are about to be called. Let's see what we can do about it. Both ways are the same thing. Mm-hmm. You have to decide in any given moment which is going to be the best strategy and then plan it out accordingly.
Focusing on the first example, it's easier for me to say yes, no, maybe. In the second example, getting me into your world, into your playground, it's pretty hard to resist, right?
No, because yes and no, yeah. In the sense that, but the first area that you just mentioned, admittedly, I've blown up the time bomb.
Boom.
Yeah, so I can't use it again. And you may be pissed off, but the underlying facts haven't changed. Mm-hmm. You've still got a problem with your bombs. So that hasn't changed. Now we can say, so let's say I blow it up publicly. Mm-hmm. Afterwards, I can come up to you and say, I didn't want to do that. Mm-hmm. But you really left me no choice. So now, how can I help you? We're in a new environment.
It's a little bit like Trump's trial, isn't it?
No. Trump is... It's a different strategy completely. It's a don't care strategy to blow it all up.
Push you and then I help you, right?
No, sometimes. Well, that's what people would like to believe.
Yeah.
I will throw you in the water when you can't swim, and then I'll throw you the life ring.
Yeah.
Doesn't always work. The experience of the 4 years didn't mean it was always like that. Mm-hmm. I think the knowing information, but also the other side really knows that you know. It's very rare that you know something that's. And then, of course, if you do know something, it may be illegal to have got that information in the first place. So there's all sorts of problems with that.
Okay. So you talk to thousands of people and a lot of interviews, a lot of also negotiations. Who impressed you the most?
Well, the one who impresses me the most is the one who answers honestly, even though it might be to their adverse. So Paul Pullman, who was the CEO of Unilever, would always answer honestly. Jamie Dimon, I've not interviewed him, I'm hoping to, but if you watch interviews with him, he'll always answer honestly. The late Arne Sorensen of Marriott always answered honestly. In terms of leaders, the former finance minister of Sweden always answered directly. Benjamin Netanyahu. Mm-hmm. You may hate his politics. Well, I don't know what he did. But when you interviewed him, he would always answer honestly. He would always, people may have disliked what he said, but you always got a straightforward answer from him. And that, I think, is the crucial part for any good interview. The person who answers honestly and the person who answers with passion, they're the ones. I said to Hugh Hefner, I use this as an example. I said to Hugh Hefner once, what happens to Hugh Hefner? What happens inside Hugh Hefner when a beautiful woman walks in the room? And he stopped. And it's as if time stands still. And I realized he'd thought about this. He had his concept of a beautiful woman. He'd really given, same with all the people, all the artists that you meet and interview, they've thought about it. And all my job is sometimes to pull, sometimes to push, sometimes to tickle under the chin, sometimes to beat around the head. But my goal is simply always the same thing. Just bring it out of you. Get it out of you. That's it. It's my only job.
If I understood it correctly, if someone is answering too fast, then the information is useless?
No, because they may be ready for it. But you have to make sure that the answer is authentic. So the answer that comes out too fast is often inauthentic. It's often prepared. It's often, particularly if it's a junket media tour, it's often quick and easy.
Talking about authentic answer, you realize your opponent party, your partner, is lying to you, into your face. What do you do?
Well, what do you want to do? Ask yourself, what are your options? Ask yourself, what are your options? What are they? Go through them with me. What are your options?
Number one, you can address it. Then he or she will lose his or her face.
So, fine. But could be a part of the strategy, yeah?
Second one is, you know it, but you don't care.
Yeah.
Third one is, you go around to find a new way to uncover the truth.
Fair enough. There's a fourth way. You can make them aware that you know it, but you're not going to hit them over the head with it. So they tell the lie, and you just simply say, well, I don't agree with you on that. And I think the evidence is against you on that. They now know you're not a fool. You don't need to say, well, that's rubbish, nonsense, that's lying. You just say, well, I think we'll have to agree to disagree on that. I would suggest the evidence is against you.
And then you leave it. Is it enough, or do you want to get more out of your...
No, you want to actually let him continue the lie.
You allow it?
Oh, yeah. So what you do is you say, well, I think that the evidence is against you. I don't agree with that, and I think the evidence is against you. But let's assume you're right.
That's brilliant. Huh? Mm-hmm.
Let's assume, now you really made it clear he's not right. Mm-hmm. The mere premise of, let's assume you're right. Haven't you got a problem with your position that XYZ can't happen? Isn't that the weakness of your position? That if you go down, regardless of whether what you say is accurate, right or not, because what you want to avoid in an interview, what I want to avoid now is him restating his position. No, Richard, I am right because of X, Y, Z. No, I don't want that. But we're finished with that. That's gone. That's gone. We're now talking about the weakness of your position because of that. And you do that by saying, well, let's assume you're right on this, if you'll be so kind. And then you try and a great thing to do with an interview is to try and build some common ground. Now, actually, common ground is the wrong word. Firmer ground. So you might suddenly say, well, let's assume you're right on that. And then you might want to say, well, we were talking earlier about the excellent tea that's made here. And you sort of find something that you can just get everybody back on being nice to each other, and then you can go again.
If you have to summarize all your learnings, your experience, your knowledge in one or twice for negotiation?
It's really simple. It's really simple. It's just so simple, it's unbelievably obvious. Be present. That's it. Be present. So we assume that you have done your homework, you've got your negotiating strategy, both parties have come prepared to ballroom dance, you know what you want to get out of it, but that moment comes when you're like this. Now you have to be present. And nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. Don't worry about the post-mortem. Don't worry about, have you got there? Is he doing it? Yes or no? Be present now. The only thing that matters is be present. You can always repair the damage afterwards.
Are you sure?
Tell me an occasion when you can't. I mean, in a hostage situation, arguably, maybe. But that's even more important. Be present.
Agreed. So you know our big vision to bring together the global negotiation community. It's your first time visiting our negotiation conference here in Zurich. What is your impression about our vision?
I think it's fascinating. I think it's absolutely fascinating for the simple reason. Everybody in a negotiation comes from opposite sides. Oh, yeah, and everybody wants to get something out of it. Mm-hmm. So to have all the people who are all doing the tricks of the trade coming to learn about how to do them better, recognizing that they may be doing it against each other a week next Thursday, there's a certain elegance to the process. But it's very hard because the people you've got here are the elites of negotiation. They know how to do it. They know how to do it, and they've been doing it at the highest global geopolitical and economic level. And what you're trying to do is give them that extra edge that's going to help them win. Let's face it. I know negotiations aren't win-win. Yeah, fine.
Ah, come on.
There's a winner. There may not be a loser, but there's a winner.
Yeah, I agree completely. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.